and to warm greetings to everyone who's joining us online. Welcome to the third plenary session. It's called COVID-19, Lessons for Early Warning, Prevention, Preparedness, and Response. We are honored to be co-organizing this session with the WCDM team. My name is Sapna Dubey from the Disaster Risk Reduction Division, United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, UNESCAP. Please allow me to introduce our eminent panelists, all of whom would be joining us online. Dr. Raj Kumar, Director of the National Remote Sensing Center, ISRO. Dr. Sanjay Srivastava, Chief of the Disaster Risk Reduction Division, UNESCAP. Professor Indrajit Pal, from the Asian Institute of Technology in Thailand. Dr. Giriraj Amarnath, from the International Water Management Institute. Dr. Shri Shravan, from the UN Office of Outer Space Affairs. Mr. Sangan Kim, from the Disaster Risk Reduction Division, UNESCAP. And Dr. Madhurima Sarkar Swesgood, from the Disaster Risk Reduction Division, UNESCAP. May I request all the panelists to please turn on their videos and we can take a quick photograph together. Thank you very much. To start with, I humbly request all our speakers to please abide by the 10 minutes duration for your presentation. First, now I invite Dr. Sanjay Srivastava, Chief of the Disaster Reduction Division, UNESCAP, for his opening remarks. So please.
Yeah. Thank you, Sapna, and good morning, good afternoon to colleagues, especially my Professor Indrajit and all my fellow colleagues. The motivation behind this technical session was what happened in last 2 years when there was a disaster with the backdrop of different waves of COVID pandemic. What happened? What we learned from this complex and cascading disaster, managing them. And this is what first time the world experienced to such a large scale, the fury of a systemic risk, the hazard which started with a health system, a health sector, and how it percolated down to the whole sector of society, economy, all over the world. But then what is the biggest lesson from disaster with the backdrop of pandemic? The biggest lesson was we could not able to anticipate the risk, which part of the world pandemic is going to hit. If you do a lockdown in a particular city, whether the next neighboring city, you will able to prevent the pandemic. So we could never understood the transmission of the risk. And that's the one of the biggest challenge of not anticipating the risk. And that is the reason most of the response worldwide were not adequate because we could not anticipate the risk. The second milestone in last 2 years is as a scientific community is IPCC Assessment Report 6. I think this is considered to be a breakthrough report because first time it brought so clearly without any what is called much scientific uncertainty about the evidences of disaster risk. Then the third part is from my side, from my organization perspective, ISCAP perspective. Is a UN organization driven by member countries, and there was a loud and a very strong, I should say, the voice from the member country was what UN is doing. And they brought a resolution at regional level. Of course, there were a resolution in WHO, Assembly, General Assembly, everywhere. But in Regional Economic Commission, Bangkok, the resolution was what we call Bangkok Principle, the implement disaster Sendai in health sector or vice versa. So we should do much more. And similarly, we had a committee on disaster risk reduction, the similar mandate. And then how we responded in a very small way, that we brought a analytical report, Asia Pacific Disaster Report, Resilience in the Riskier World. We developed a portal which provides a risk escape, a complete risk profile, which includes natural hazards and biological hazards together. I think this was one of the few attempts where in one platform you see the disaster risk from the biological as well as natural hazards. You are going to hear more about this portal and some of the key products, particularly the impact forecasting, from my colleagues Madhurima and Sangal Kim. So it is with this background this session was organized. And as I mentioned to you, the biggest lesson was anticipatory action. We could not anticipate the risks, so forget about the early warning system. Now, many agencies worldwide, they responded to it from whatever capacity they have with their mandate, with the demand from the government. It has started from National Remote Sensing Center in India, I said, is a premier space institution. So I'm very happy that Dr. Rajkumar, director of the center himself, is here. Then IWMI, my colleague Giriraj was working very hard from CGIR system, particularly on many floods and drought in midst of the COVID. So we will hear the perspective of IWMI. Then AIT, Asian Institute of Technology, has a huge academics network, and you will hear more about it from Professor Indrajit Pal. And finally, my colleagues from UNOSA, Sirish, that's the global level what the space agency was doing. So this session will give you the glimpse of different players, particularly how they were supporting, to what extent they learned from managing cascading or systemic risk in last 2 years. So thank you, Sapna. This is from my side. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sanjay sir. So now I invite our first speaker, Dr. Rajkumar, who is the director of the National Remote Sensing Center, ISRO, for his presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Sapna. You are able to hear me?
Yes, yes.
And my presentation, is it?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you all. So just I wanted to thank the organizer for giving the opportunity to our center, ISRO, for this important event. What we wanted to mainly talk about in this was how we are supporting all those activities in this, even the COVID also. Otherwise also, from the space-based inputs, we are having the support from the ISRO.
Sorry,
using
Dr. Raj, we are not able to see your video for some reason.
Oh, okay,
your
fine.
Video on?
I will make it. I thought it was fine. Yeah, I was not. It was not on. Okay, now you can see my video also. Is it? Now you can see, isn't it?
Yes, we can see your video now.
Thank you. Yeah, so I was talking about that how we are supporting this disaster management program of the India through the many inputs from the space-based input as well as through the numerical modeling and the ground-based network. So I will talk briefly about all those things. As you know, the rapid response and services what we are providing, services, it is a part of the disaster management program, or we call it the decision support center, which was established in NRSC itself. To deliver all this, mainly the inputs from the space burn as well as the aerial also what we are having towards the disaster support system. In this, some of the major activities are the near real-time monitoring and mapping of all the disaster of all types. Mostly, the disaster, the floods, cyclones, forest fires. One of the major is the landslide also, you heard this year itself, and the earthquakes. And then we also generate the vulnerability and hazard zonation map for these things, mainly the floods, using the earlier data. I will show some of the example. And this support all this database. We are having one portal now, so that NDEM, what we call it, the National Database for Emergency Management, which is having all type of disasters related inputs from the various agencies are supporting it, I think, enthusiastically, and our one portal. So through this, we are supporting not only the disaster in India, but all over the Sentinel Asia also, as well as the Inter-Disaster Charter. So when we are talking about this COVID, just I'll first talk about the COVID, all of the disaster. Anyhow, most of the time we talked about earlier also, but during this last 2 years, during the COVID also, we try to support from the whatever geospatial tools what we are having, as well as the space-based data and some of the modern techniques through our Bhuvan portal. You know very well from the NRC. So we had a dashboard for the COVID-19, which was developed for the Ministry of Health and Welfare, as well as some of the state also, because that time, the lockdown was there, and then suddenly lockdown was there and people were not able to go out. So we started some of the very innovative things, but now it is a well-known mobile Raitu Bazaar tracking for Department of Agriculture, for our Telangana government itself, home quarantine tracker, citizen reporting, and many things you can see for this, and geolocation and tracing, because that was also important. And one of the later things come of the vaccination centers for this, because the vaccination, where the vaccination is going to happen and where which location near to you, as well as the whether how much vaccines are available. All those things are the vaccine availability. We also developed through our portal. You can see for different type of things, because this was very important. That time everybody was afraid that how to get it, this information. Other portals are also there for ministry side, but this was told to us, so we also did this. And afterwards, in the second wave, that COVID beds, the major issue was there, where the beds availability of different types, whether available or not. So for that, we did for the Tamil Nadu government, and then all type of beds and all the where there's different types and location, because we are having through Bhuvan all this location geospatial. So those also we provided. So through this, actually that time, because we have experience of the geospatial database, we could do all those things for this our own people all over India. And in addition to that, we are having a national health repository, which is mainly for the National Health Department. So for that also, we developed a number of technology platform, data collection, data analytics, and then this also we use for the COVID-19 governance with the Ministry of Health and Family Welfares. And we provided a lot of support through this also by generating the customized dashboard for them. So this is why we could do this in the very short time. The reason is because we are doing these things, as all of us know, for disaster risk reduction, as well as what we do for the near real-time activity, all those things. So as you know, I'll just talk about what other activities we are doing in the disaster response point.
Sir, sorry to disturb you. Your slides are not moving, sir.
Not moving? I thought it moved. Oh.
It is not in slideshow mode also.
Yeah, now it is all right, sir.
It was actually, I thought it was moving. Oh, sorry. No problem. Anyhow, now we have already reached. Okay, no problem. Anyhow, I will, because I think slideshow mode. Yeah, I was doing, but it was not moving. That's what. Now it is to the which response phase mode you can see.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it will not move. That's what I was in a slideshow mode only. I was showing some of the slides. Actually, I was not knowing because these are the some of the slides. Now you can see the slides or moving.
Yes, sir. We are seeing the response phase.
Now you support through COVID. Oh, sorry. Support COVID phase you can see.
No.
That's why I think in this sometime it does not. That's why. What I will do, I will. No, I will do in this mode only because this mode I think you can see that.
Yeah, now it has come.
Yeah, I think I will show in this mode only because sometime in normally it is not seen. I don't know. In WebEx also I had sometime this problem. Anyway.
Yes, sir. Now it is coming COVID.
Yeah, COVID, but it will you cannot see this other things. Anyhow, so yeah, COVID I was showing different COVID time how we did all these things to dashboard generation as well as these things COVID pets. What I was talking, these slides were there. So anyhow, for the now I will talking about that what we normally we do with the response for the near real-time flood and cyclone monitoring. Regularly we are doing disaster mapping and we provide this support for the all this charter and for this year also as well as 2020 and this almost 2000 images were analyzed and with the many missions not only India for other missions also. And you know this India is mostly the flood and cyclone prone. So for all those major cyclones were addressed during this time, and this information as well as the product were disseminated to agencies like Ministry of Home Affairs, NDMA, and all those things, as well as the central agencies. And these are some of the products what I was talking by the flood generation as well as how the flood progresses. So such things also you can see for this Assam as well as the Odisha recent cyclone, Yas cyclone. So based on the all this data, we could provide all these maps in the regular time, almost within a day or so, depending on the getting the image. And then how much area is affected in the cyclone crop and all those things that also. And how we generate all those things because of we already have based on the almost 20 years of data flood hazard maps for the most of the states which are flood like almost 6 states east side Assam, Bihar, West Bengal, Odisha, and mostly in the UP also as well as the Andhra Pradesh. So we have generated all these maps and atlases, and we are shared with all these agencies, and some of these recent atlases were released also. But Andhra Pradesh, West Bengal, and UP are ready to be released shortly. And in addition to all this database, we also having the flood warning based on the modeling. So we developed the flood early warning systems for the 2 major rivers, Godavari and Tapi. And now these are the last year and this year using near real-time data as well as forecast, because flood forecast is you need the rainfall data. So using the IMD data forecast, we are near real time. We provided the alerts also for this is 2 years, and we have seen the accuracy is very good. So it will be very useful for the country. From the flood point of view, these are the you know very well these things we are doing. And in addition to that, for the other disasters also, you remember February 2021, we had a very big disaster in Rishi Ganga. That time also, how all the flow from where the debris they are flowing, that using the satellite data, as well as the origin of these things, where the really where the landslide is there. So that also we could map, and then the whole time series mapping we could do during this time for this disaster also based on. In addition to that, for the landslide, one of the major thing what we are doing nowadays, based on the kinematics, we are having the using the INSAR techniques. We are providing this how the forecast can be done. You know very well that for the landslide forecast may not be very accurate, but we are trying to forecast it based on the INSAR technique, as I told, how the slope is major displacement is happening in this case. So based on the displacement as well as the increase in the slope, we are able to do the movement, track the movement of this landslide. And 2017 landslide of the Kotropi in Himachal Pradesh, we could see that it can have the prediction, very good prediction capability. Based on that, we have made one project called the SILAS, and through that we will be doing that. In addition to this, we are also, I think the slide may not be moving, that's why actually I am going in both the modes. Through all this course network, we are having 8 GNS course network in the Uttarakhand and Himachal Pradesh. Through that also, this tectonic plate velocities of these Indian plates are being monitored to see how much strain is being built up. And also, you know that so that since long this is being done through the TEC monitoring, how the TEC have any impact on the earthquake. So that also study, because this is, we call it research only, because not well proven whether it can do. So that also is being done. For the other type of disaster, not exactly disaster, but this is a very important topic for the forest fire alert, as well as now you know that pollution wise is agriculture burning also, and mostly in the Delhi around region. So those also are being monitored using the satellite data, and then how much burning that also is used for the other useful products also, like the biomass. For that also we are doing, but disaster point of view, these alerts are being generated. And then ocean side, oil slip mapping, oil spill mapping, and monitoring the satellite data, as well as the modeling through genome model, as well as the tracking through this. We are doing the tracking of this mostly this oil spills in this region. And then this is a very important. I was talking about the NDEM portal, National Database for Emergency Management, which is having all the output. If you, I request all of you to visit this page and see all type of disaster as well as the inputs are being coming here, so that in near real time we may provide to the stakeholders all this warning as well as the risk response and maps. All those can be done. Some of the things are open for public also, but some of things are really for the stakeholders, and the whole decision support system tool have been developed so that proper decision can be taken in these situations. And some of the mobile apps are also being developed. So this is one of the major things I'll say from the ISRO point of view has been done, and all you can see the 3D visualization and many some of the other language also in Indian language support have been generated, but for other languages also we are trying. So this is one of the major thing I was talking. And then all this, as discussed, all the data and everything are being disseminated to the public through the mails as well as through SMS alerts and through our NDEM and one portals. And for the flood forecast through our National Hydrological Project portal also we are doing. So and all these inputs are being used by all these people for the emergency purpose who are the stakeholders, and we are hopeful that all those things will be much useful and we can, with the support of all of us, we can do much better way. This is another one of the portal. I'll just after that I'll stop. Meteorological Oceanography Satellite Data Archival Center of ISRO itself, it is in Ahmedabad. There also we provide all this based on the cyclone, because cyclone track as well as the when cyclone being generated. All those information now casting. So those data also as well as information through this also we are. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much, sir. Now I invite Professor Indrajit Pal from AIT for his presentation, and would request you to please stick to the time limit if possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, I'll stick to 10 minutes. Sorry. First of all, I'd like to congratulate the team. We're trying for this WMDC for last year, even we could not make it. So it's really a great pleasure for me to join this program, actually. So first, I don't have any PowerPoint slides. Normally, in a day-to-day basis, we are watching too much of PowerPoint in classroom. I used to say stupidly, like PowerPoint poisoning. So I used to avoid sometimes PowerPoints as well. So I'll start with why we are talking about the systemic risk and what is the sort of big deal. And for a few years, we are talking too much on the systemic risk. So the systemic risk is actually the different than the individual risk. So when you're talking about the individual events and we are planning for the risk and other mitigational measures for the individual events, that might not be the sort of enough preparation we are doing. So the individual event can also trigger multiple events. So if we take the entire system into the consideration in anticipation, so then we can come up with some sort of holistic planning, and then we can address some sort of systemic approach. So these are the baseline of the systemic risk, to look the risk as a whole, and also look into the cascading component of the risk. So one risk or one hazard can also come up with or impact in multiple hazards, or one hazard also can impact or generate multiple hazards as well. So during the pandemic situation, what we have seen, like the technological advancement and the innovation have created a new opportunity actually for the enhancing the disaster resilience and also the risk reduction. Innovation is increasingly essential for an effective response to the recovery from COVID itself in the pandemic in the low and middle income countries. I belong to in a higher education institution in Thailand. During pandemic for almost 18 months, almost 20 months, we are working online, and the classes and everything is going online. So pandemic the COVID-19 pandemic is not only impacted economically to every nation, also we got impacted in different dimensions, be it education, be it social or economically, and livelihoods and everything has been impacted. So I was also studying about what are the impacts in Southeast Asian region due to COVID happened on the higher education institution. I think all of us are aware about the Indian system about the impact of COVID in schools and colleges. Like for last couple of semesters, like maybe about 3 semesters, everything is closed. So it's almost very much difficult to continue like this. So I'd like to explain, in recent days, COP26 happened a few weeks before. All of us are very much aware about this. There, the climate change related hazard was discussed a lot. And disaster management was also one of the major key area what was also discussed in detail. So in COP26 recently happened in Glasgow, the agenda for 2030 and in the Sustainable Development Goal and also Sendai framework is actually need to be supported by some of the activities, actions right now. So it's a very prime time to address all the different risks, and that is what we are calling the systemic risk. So COP26 also definitely moved the pointer from the adaptation to the resilience. This is a key. These two things are very much discussed in COP26. If you observe very closely about COP25, in COP25, what actually we got? We got Santiago Network. That is actually to understand the loss and damage due to multiple natural hazards, not pandemic. So the natural hazards, climate-induced natural hazards primarily. So this was discussed and also network developed like framework, but that framework was not very much operational. In COP26, it was almost like came as the operational plan. So henceforth, I think we are optimistic in COP26, after COP26, like by 2030, we will be able to achieve some of the adaptation practices and the strategy, whatever has been decided by the countries in terms of the climate-induced hazards. So this is one of the key area. And in terms of the AIT, also, as Dr. Sanjay was mentioning, he is very much involved in various research with AIT for many years. So AIT promotes the capacity building. This is one of the areas actually we should all think, like we can talk about adaptation. We can, just before we got a very, very good insight from NRSA, ISRO. So unless and until we have a capacity, human capacity, that will be, it will not, nothing will work actually. So the capacity building challenges with the multidisciplinary approach is one of the key area where AIT is working on to support the global challenges and also the various resilience issues. And that is also one of the portfolio for our disaster management program as well. If we talk about, if we look into the WMO recently, high impact hydrometeorological events do not recognize any national boundaries. Like we have seen during pandemic as well, there is no national boundaries actually. And after a few months, when the countries are also announced different type of lockdowns, like local level and international and national level, and then we got some result, but still I think the digital sort of process possibly we need to sort of look into. And there's a huge gap possibly into the early warning system on the natural hazards and linking that with the pandemic systems. So we need to work on that yet, because this is almost like in the digital, in the digital world right now, we don't have any experience before, like pandemic, like what supposed to be, what type of warning system supposed to be. So I don't think like we have much done on the integration between the pandemic early warning and natural hazards early warning. So this integration is very much required at this point. We have seen different approaches on the IoT-based approach and AI-based approach. So use of different sensors and monitoring conditions are also there, like which can detect like a trigger mechanism. But the disaster management is the ideal case, ideal system where we can really sort of apply various type of IoTs. Right now, if you see the recent examples, like in Chennai flood in 2015, Twitter was used a lot to collect the data as a cloud sourcing tool. But I don't know. I don't have any information like how much data we have used further. So the cloud sourcing and creating the big data is on the make it useful is also another challenge right now. So I can see like there is a very good drive from WMO, created like WMO guidelines in multi-hazard impact-based forecast and warning services. And also they introduced like multi-hazard early warning system and checklist, which exactly supports the Sendai framework disaster risk reduction, that 2030 agenda points as well. And there are 4 major phases actually WMO suggests in terms of the we call like weather ready nations or weather ready programs. So there are 4 phases actually they have introduced. Phase 1 is talking about the developing matrix, which could provide you the impact-based forecasting, like primary, secondary, and tertiary, which is actually talking about the systemic risk or cascading risk. Second phase talks about the technology and communication tools, multiple hazard impact-based forecasting tools. Third phase talks about the development of standard operating procedure. This is one of the issue where we can talk about the risk governance from the national governments and the local level governance also. The standard operating procedures provide us the structured framework for the integration of the early warning to mitigate the impact of severe weather, with a focus on the few key areas like strengthening on-time information, near real-time information, and also coordination between the various agencies. Phase 4 actually talks about the capacity development or the training and outreach. This is the area actually I think we need to really talk about or think about how we can really improve the capacity. This is the drive right now going on in the international conference. Is also one of the issue, like one of the area where we can really talk about the sensitization of the various groups. So with that, maybe I'll stop here. Maybe I'll come back with some few recommendations in the end, possibly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. Thank you for shedding light on the importance of systemic risks, resilience building, and capacity development. Moving on, I invite Dr. Giriraj Amarnath from the International Water Management Institute for his intervention.
Yeah. Thank you, Sapna. Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
You can see my screen.
Yes, we can also see your screen.
Okay. Thank you so much. So first of all, thanks to Dr. Sanjay Srivastava, UNESCAP, and the Dr. Chakravarti for supporting this important side event. And the speakers have already spoken in great depth on the challenges of COVID, and also Director NRS has spoken on the vast capabilities of space technology coming from ISRO. And I have happened to be a junior researcher, started my journey in National Remote Sensing Center. So I'm happy to be part of this session as well. And Mr. Indrajit also spoken on the breadth of systemic risk. I think it might be good for me to take up some of the technology examples on drought specifically, though I was asked to speak on both floods and drought. Given the limited time, we will focus on why early warning systems are very important for preparedness and drought management, which is the core focus of this particular presentation. I think while the audience are quite familiar on drought early warning, I think it is important to keep those stock taking points. One, it is the purpose of early warning is to alert various users, not just government, but also the communities and extension, the private sectors. Everyone need to be alerted of where and why the drought is happening, and how that early warning systems are quite important in the long-term drought mitigation efforts. So that's very important to look at. And unlike other even drought is a very complex phenomenon in terms of understanding and characterizing the drought, varying from agriculture drought, meteorological drought, hydrological drought, and socio-economical impact, where the vulnerable smallholder farmers generally see the impact there, right? And it is also during the course of drought early warning, it is important the institutions share the data what they have. Unfortunately, we see in many countries the silo system still exists on data sharing. There is a lot of rooms to improve coordination and strengthening data sharing. In some institutions where they do not have data, open access policies need to be strengthened by global players. How countries who do not have space capabilities and who do not have monitoring capabilities, how those countries need to be empowered, which is also one of the recognition of Sendai framework of institutional cooperation. I think early warning is all about working together. People to people approach is very important. And in early warning, it is also very important is the lead time, which is very important to respond to the crisis. We have seen in Cyclone Amphan how Met Department have played an incredible role in terms of providing well in advance 4 to 5 days, and how the National Disaster Response Force, the Disaster Management Authority played a role. But in drought, we don't see that level of coordination is happening. Unlike the disasters that is visible, there is a lot of people-centric approach happens, but in drought, it's quite limited, I would say, from our experiences. Now, while people think about early warning is a one-time job, someone does it and we have to stop our work, I think it's a more connecting the dots. Once you have early warning, we use the term called early action and early finance. And the previous speaker also spoken about the anticipatory action, which is very important. Unless we don't have the postmortem and the pre-assessment, it will be the purpose of early warning system is quite limited. So I think we need to connect the dots across early action and early finance. And also it is not just there is a data is available, but how do you translate this data into a climate financing, larger resilient development strategy we should develop. Often we see that when the programs are developed, how do we look at the historical drought footprints? How do we look at the historical drought records? What was the lessons learned? And what climate investments need to be promoted? So there is a need for really scientific evidence-based watershed program, integrated water management efforts need to be promoted on that. And communities need to take part in all those initiatives. It cannot be done on a single approach, like one institution's working and rest of the communities are not participatory. So there is participatory approach is very important to have capacity across all those users we are talking about in this drought early warning system. And I think Dr. Rajkumar already spoken about the capabilities of remote sensing. I think today we can say while we are in 21st century, we are already seeing a growth in satellite data, but still I would say the open access data is still challenging. Thanks to European Space Agency, NASA and many others providing incredible data for globally, which is really playing a big role on ensuring countries can have access to data, monitoring and building capabilities. I'll come to one example, like country like Afghanistan, how they are increasingly using the Earth observation capabilities just before the problems all got started there, right? So you can measure various indices. I would not go more detail on that given the limited time. Today you can monitor sub-daily drought triggers quite systematically. And there are already various countries implemented their national drought manuals and how triggers need to be used for declaring the drought, right? So I would not go more on that, right? So, and again, as I said in my beginning, the drought is a progressive nature. So you cannot just use meteorological drought and declare the drought, because there is always a return monsoon or there is a delayed dry spell, etc. So you need to monitor moisture, hydrological storage capacity, subsurface, and you need to ensure how do you mitigate drought by using all these various capabilities Earth observation data is offering. Now, while these informations are available, I think in South Asia, IMI is the first one implemented South Asia drought monitoring way back in early 2000 using NOAA and later in MODIS, etc. And today we see people are able to monitor even less than 50-meter satellite resolution. So we are looking at actionable data to make timely decision. That is very important. Not just we keep monitoring using satellite data, but how different institutions coordinate and work together and make timely decisions on those capabilities. Any countries are developing a monitoring capabilities, right? So as an example, it is also to have inclusive data in the sense we provide knowledge products and the communities interpret that. We do a lot of instrumentation work, ensuring what farmers understand and what we learn from farmers and make it in a decision support tool so that we meaningfully provide strategies that are more inclusive rather than just a top-driven approach. That we need to keep that in mind. So we were also recognized by the global consortium from the geospatial world on the surveillance systems that has been tested and used by various countries, including India. Now, so what does it mean? Actually, these data sets are available. We can provide some climate services. Being climate smart is very important. CRIDA, we work with ICR, Indian Council of Agricultural Research, and we have seen evidences how farmers have transformed in many of our pilot districts where they were moving from rice to other crops, diversifying the crops in areas that are limited resources with water. And we have a lot of good success in terms of their yield as well, right? So a lot of studies we have done on those focus as well. It's not just keeping monitoring and knowing where there is drought and how do you mitigate that. Now, I just want to take our focus more to Afghanistan, which is where they do not have space agency, but they draw upon a lot of international cooperation. And there was a problem in 2018 where a lot of protests from farmers and communities that drought is not declared timely. And that's how they have approached World Bank, and World Bank reached out to IMI, and we developed this drought early warning support system. It's a fully cloud-based system, and it is being used, including early this year until the COP has happened. And you can see here it builds with a systematic approach of monitoring all the drought type, providing an SMS, WhatsApp system on sub-seasonal forecast. So we get access from IMD and IITM. That's a collaboration we are doing there, right? So essentially, what does that early warning provides is a monitoring and early warning. And the long-term records of drought we produce over 20 years are used for vulnerability and impact assessment. That's where the early action will come in. And the early finance and the long-term strategy is to mitigate those responses. So we use all those data, build a short-term and long-term. It could be insurance focus, it could be watershed program, it could be climate safety net. A lot of areas where these data sets can be reused, and which is again the 3 pillars of the WMO integrated drought management program. So we should not just focus only monitoring and early warning. If these 3 pillars are not done, lifetime we'll be keep doing the drought early warning all those times. So we need to fundamentally shift our practices and have a radical thinking on all phases of the drought preparedness strategy, right? And the decision support should be very robust. While early warning systems are, we do not have a lot of time, so we need to have quick decisions to be made as a bottom-up approach, remote sensing, information, knowledge, and decision. So as you can see, we lined up various ministries and departments, and there is a coordinated approach. We have a drought early warning committee, and they take this information more seriously as a joint bulletin, and we provide the needed data, what they need. It's not just we dump as much as data we want. In terms of what data they need, we are able to help them and provide the needed services. So I just want to, this is the kind of product we provide to them. Real time, they can download every pixels of data for entire Afghanistan. And I must say that using AFDUs and the World Bank projections on early action and finance, on 22nd June, just before all the problems started, the president has declared drought for the areas that are mapped red. So it was done much 2 months in advance compared to the years where they had a problem. So this is where the power of digital data, automation, cloud technology, capabilities to work together, all have shown a great pathways for drought preparedness strategy, I would say, countries like Afghanistan. And not just limiting this product, but also translating that into a food security aspect, right? So what we do here, take all the data that is coming from our system. Given the limited time, I would fast track. So we have all this information available. And what we do is, as I said, except the yield data provided by the government, we collect all those variables from our system, and we were able to give the predictions of what the yield is going to be there, right? So it is a country level yield forecast. So our model is quite consistent since 2007-6 onwards. And we are able to predict 2020 and 2021. You can see here, this is for 2021. Now we can go at provincial level. Our models have capabilities to say what's the likely yield. So the purpose of these yield numbers are food security, malnutrition, undernourished people can be targeted in this district, that the yield is going to be quite poor, and there is no export. It's all about getting import from other countries, where government of India is providing now wheat over 50 million tons. That's a number. Why it is going? One is conflict, the other is also the climate disaster. So when the disasters collide, these technologies are critical in my opinion, right? So I just want to say 2 more slides here. This is a good example in Sri Lanka, where it is again, we see the power of departments working together in the early warning phase. And now we issue a common bulletin with the World Food Program. And this is again the leadership team at the national government use this data for actionable and participatory action in the next 3 to 4 months, what they are supposed to do, right? So that's the core point of this particular collaboration here. So it's not that we stopped in Afghanistan or South Asia. So we are doing various initiatives in Africa, and now we have just started in South America as well, and Latin America. So you can see there the power of digital tools. Now we can produce continental products, which was not a possibility at a 100-meter resolution. We can produce for entire Africa now. And the purpose is not just preparing a map, but also providing a national drought risk index. So connecting your hazard, exposure, and vulnerability, you can now prepare a national level risk map automatically, and more dynamic maps you can produce, right? So these are available. I can share this presentation to all of you to go through later. So my take-home messages here is, we need to be more proactive in strategizing our response strategy, and not to just focus on early warning alone, but look at all the phases. And drought-prone nations increasingly need to invest in drought resilience strategy. That is very important. And also, I think we cannot keep during the drought period, we cannot just manually do a lot of work. We need to have decision support framework need to be developed so that we designate those information quick with a limited time we have got, right? And ensure that it should not be seen as a project. It should be looked at more sustainability and scaling of any services we work with the countries. And also still, I would say the impact assessment is still lacking. Sector wise, we don't see drought when the moment we say everyone jumps into agriculture. There are tourism, there are many sector, water sector, there is not much has been done. So we need to have a clear assessment on all those sectors, in my opinion. And I think we need to collaborate more. We need to bring in private sector. We need to work together on this focus of this work. So thanks again for giving this opportunity. Over to you, Sapna.
Thank you very much, Dr. Amarnath, especially for the key takeaway messages. Now I invite Mr. Sangan Kim from the Disaster Risk Reduction Division, UNSCAP, for his presentation.
Samna, can you see my presentation and hear me?
Yes, we can see the slides moving, and we
Thank
can
you very
hear
much.
as well.
Thank you very much. I'm very glad to have the opportunity to present today, and I'd like to thank Dr. Chakrabarti and the organizers for the opportunity. As the previous speakers mentioned, the importance of the early warning systems, and also recognize the impact-based forecasting. I'd like to share the ASCAP's work and approach on impact-based forecasting and risk assessment under the Asia-Pacific Disaster Resilience Network. Just to begin with, to remind us that in Asia-Pacific, it is critical to minimize the impact of climate change, climate hedges. Climate-related hedges have greatly affected countries in the region, and since 1970, half of the Asia-Pacific fatalities and most of the affected from natural disasters were from hydrometeorological hedges like tropical cyclones, floods, and droughts. In the last couple of years, we all experienced the climate hedges converging with the COVID-19. Countries have faced the cascading risks from the pandemic with the other hedges. And in this regard, impact-based forecasting can provide valuable information for policymakers, stakeholders, and public to address these risks. In this regard, ASCAP, the member states of ASCAP requested ASCAP to strengthen multi-hazard early warning system, particularly those related to hydrometeorological issues in 2015 through a resolution. And then followed by 2017, another resolution asking continue to support and facilitate multi-hazard early warning systems and impact-based forecasting. And witnessing the converging of the pandemic and other hedges, in this year, at the 7th session of ASCAP Committee on Disaster Risk Reduction, at the thematic expert meeting on the implementation of the health aspects of the Sendai framework, recognized impact-based forecasting as important measures to go forward. And then committee recommended to promote multi-hazard early warning systems, including through impact-based forecasting approach for the detection of hazards with a reasonable lead time. In this aspect, ASCAP is undertaking promoting impact-based forecasting, and our approach, our understanding of impact-based forecasting is combining hazard, exposure, and vulnerability data to identify the risk and support decision-making. And it is moving from what the weather will be to what the weather will do, and synthesizing the weather information to identify the range of risks faced over an area. Impact-based forecasting in different timescales can help decisions of relevant stakeholders in different stages, and operational decisions, tactical decisions, strategic decisions, and long-term decisions as well. Our approach for impact-based forecasting, and this is our impact-based forecasting framework, but to save time, let me share the video that we are developing to introduce this impact-based forecasting. And it's a still draft version and yet to finalize, but it'll be very good summary on our approach for impact-based forecasting. Conference hall, can you play the video?
The Asia-Pacific region is the most disaster-prone on Earth. Typhoons, floods, drought, heat waves, all have the potential to devastate communities and economies. While conventional weather forecasting systems can predict when extreme weather will strike and what will most likely occur, they lack the ability to predict how the weather will affect communities on the ground. This is the role of impact-based forecasting. It changes the focus of forecasting from what the weather will be to what the weather will do. For example, consider this. Conventional weather forecasting systems can predict when and where on the coastline a typhoon is likely to strike. But think about a community that lives in this typhoon's path. How will they be impacted? For instance, how many people live in this location and are at risk? Could their agricultural crops be impacted? What infrastructure is vulnerable? Is there a risk of an overlapping disaster, such as a COVID-19 outbreak? Impact-based forecasting both asks and answers questions like these. When combined with effective warning services, the potential impacts of extreme weather can be communicated to emergency authorities and other government bodies to help the people likely to be hit. This enables informed response decisions to be made, reducing damage and saving lives. ESCAP's approach to impact-based forecasting involves combining information on hazards, exposure, and vulnerability to identify potential impacts and support decision-making. Let's break this down more closely. Hazard data includes climate information and hazard risk maps. For example, a typhoon's anticipated path. This can then be combined with exposure data, which identifies key entities of interest like a community's population number, agricultural production capacity, the location of energy infrastructure, and other health and water considerations. These entities can then be assessed in terms of how vulnerable they are to hazards. For example, is a particular type of energy infrastructure at risk from a typhoon's wind? This combination of data leads to an assessment of potential impacts, allowing for the identification of risk hotspots and early action to mitigate damage. Here are some real-world case studies of ESCAP's approach to impact-based forecasting. In May 2020, Cyclone Amphan impacted the coast of India and Bangladesh at the same time the COVID-19 pandemic was spreading. Following the approach, a map was created combining the cyclone's forecast with population exposure data and localized COVID-19 case data. This provided an integrated view of the merging of two disasters. In October 2020, Typhoon Malave struck the coast of Vietnam. After the disaster, a number of demonstrative case studies were created. For example, this map shows the country's major power plants combined with a hazard layer showing the typhoon's wind and rainfall. So, what's next? Impact-based forecasting is most effective when tailored to suit the specifics of each location and sector. This requires coordination and collaboration between government agencies and key stakeholders. It also means warning communication systems need to be optimized to suit local conditions. Working together, the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific, along with the WMO, RIMES, UK Met Office, and others, aim to promote the use of impact-based forecasting and warning services by encouraging agencies and stakeholders to share knowledge and expertise, assisting member states in Asia and the Pacific to build capacity and form partnerships, and developing relevant training manuals and e-learning courses. With climate change only set to exacerbate extreme weather events across the region, the time for action is now. Let's work together to ensure effective impact-based forecasting and warning systems are established for the benefit of the entire region.
while the video presented examples from typhoons, but we also developed demonstrative cases from seasonal forecasts for precipitation and temperature. And of course, we study the impact on population and also agriculture and energy infrastructure and water sectors and health sectors as well. These examples are available in the training manual that we produced, and also various working papers available in the website. And also, as introduced in the video, the e-learning course for impact-based forecasting warning systems have been developed and is available for anyone with a certificate will be issued afterwards. And then as a database, this Asia Pacific Risk and Resilience portal that will be introduced by my colleague later will be also provide very useful information data needed for the impact-based forecasting. I will skip the opportunities for the sake of time, but for consideration, it is important to understand the probabilistic nature of the impact-based forecasting and interpretation of its results. And identification of data need and their availability is very important. And also it should be updated timely, and provision of information products is important. And effective communication of impact-based forecasting to the relevant stakeholders, decision makers, and coordination with the sectoral ministries and NDMAs, experts and local authorities are key to come up with the proper impact-based forecasting products. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sangan, especially for putting the spotlight on impact-based forecasting. Now I invite Dr. Madhurima Sarkar Sweskut for her presentation from DRR section UNSCAP.
Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, I think for the sake of just making sure that the presentation goes smoothly, I'm going to shut my video off.
Okay, sure, Madhu.
Okay, so thank you, distinguished participants. Very good morning, good afternoon, and a good evening to everyone. So I would like to take a few minutes to talk about the Risk and Resilience portal that my colleague Sangan has introduced, and a presentation on this web portal that ASCAP has really developed under the Asia Pacific Disaster Resilience Network, and how it can really support risk assessments and building resilience in the Asia Pacific region. To both natural and biological hazards. So at the outset, I think one of the general thoughts is that there are many portals and data information and websites, as we have seen from our distinguished speakers on this panel. So why do we need another one? But I hope that through this presentation, you'll have a better understanding of the sort of unique point of view and the USP of this portal, and how it can really support the work of planning ministries and decision makers and development researchers as well. So we'll play a short video at the end, but in a nutshell, the Risk and Resilience portal provides, I think as Dr. Paul was saying, it provides really actionable and user-friendly information for the entire Asia-Pacific region. And we are trying to bridge the science policy gaps that currently exist due to the lack of translational science. So as my colleague Sangan also mentioned, not just what it will be, but what things will do. So through the integration of data from multiple existing and validated sources, the portal can help planning and sectoral policy making that answers 4 key questions. So these 4 key questions are: where are the risk and vulnerability hotspots of this disaster, climate, and health nexus? What are the current and future economic losses from cascading hazards, how much will it cost countries, the subregions, and the region to adapt to this new riskscape? And what are the adaptation priorities for the region, subregion, and for countries in the region? So, for example, a hypothetical question for a decision maker can be, how can I see in one snapshot where the most vulnerable populations are located for multi-hazard risks and for individual hazard risks? So using multiple data sources, we have created a user-friendly map for current risk scenarios, as well as under 2 climate change scenarios. And so for here, for example, we can see for South and Southwest Asia, the transboundary GBM basin is a very vulnerable area. And the portal also shows the location of the population and the infrastructure that are under these high hazard risk areas. So countries here can see their loss profile and compare it to other countries in the subregion. And this can really support evidence-based transboundary cooperation amongst countries with similar loss profiles for a particular hazard. For example, if you look at the GBM basin for floods, it can support this sort of transboundary cooperation. And finally, and more importantly, the portal provides estimates of adaptation costs and priorities for all subregions and countries. And in the next few slides, allow me to take you through some country examples, showing really how the adaptation costs and priorities can support building disaster and climate resilience, but also support acceleration of the SDG goals as well as the priorities of the Sendai framework. So, as you can see, each country has a profile with a risk and resilience profile that can support both planning and budgeting ministries as well as DRR ministries. So, for example, if we look at Bhutan here, we see that the average annual losses under the worst case climate change scenario of RCP 8.5 are about 222 million USD, around 8% of Bhutan's GDP. The climate adaptation resilience profile, it really showcases what the effective solutions for adaptation could be to provide the largest benefits. So where should you invest for getting the best cost and benefit ratio? We've used the Global Commission on Adaptation's key priorities and customized it to all countries in the region using a series of proxy indicators for each measure. So each country has its own priorities for investing in adaptation, and the portal provides the investment amount for each of the 5 adaptation measures. And the Commission notes that the 5 key priorities are investing in early warning systems, climate resilient infrastructure, improving dryland agricultural crop production, improving mangrove protection, and better water security. So for example, if we look at Bhutan here, we see that the total adaptation cost is around only 1.6% of the GDP. So where can we put investments which give us the best cost benefit ratio? So this, the Global Commission on Adaptation also gives us an estimate of the benefit of each adaptation measure. So using this, the portal here shows that for Bhutan, investing in all 5 adaptations for around 40 million can generate a net benefit of almost 165 million, with the potential to recover almost 74% of the average annual losses projected under the worst case climate change scenario. Using data for the portal, countries can also customize this according to their priorities. So for example, for Bhutan, we found that improving dryland agriculture and building resilience in water resource management might provide the best ratio of cost to net benefits, especially, let's say, in the light of increasing bluffs under climate change. If we take Fiji as another example, we see that the average annual losses under the worst case climate change scenario are around 8.3% of Fiji's GDP. The country profile also shows that total adaptation costs are around 3% of GDP. So for Fiji, investing in all 5 adaptations for 180 million can generate a net benefit of almost 872 million. And this has the potential to recover almost 95% of the average annual losses under worst case climate change scenario. Protecting mangroves, for example, will not only support the resilience of fishing industries, but will also protect the country from the increasing impacts of tropical cyclones that are being predicted under climate change scenarios of 2 degrees or more. And these adaptation measures are really crucial, particularly in this region, to accelerate the implementation of SDGs. And using this portal, countries in the region can easily estimate the costs and benefits of their investments into their budgeting plans. Finally, in addition to building the risk and resilience profiles of the countries at the national level, we have also built out sub-regional profiles for several target countries, such as the one shown here in Pakistan. Under decision support system, we developed in collaboration with the UNITAR. When the decision support system loads, users are presented with risk profiles of different subnational units, looking at vulnerability, coping capacity factors, and that contribute to the risk of each administrative unit. The sub-regional analysis has been done using the risk-informed index methodology, using complex geospatial analysis and composite indicator development. And the results are presented here in a user-friendly manner. So it's really for policy and decision makers to focus on the insights and to steer informed actions. Before I conclude the presentation with a short video on the portal, I would like to note that we plan to keep refining the portal for use in multiple sectors, and your feedback on this would be very much welcome. And I would like to end with a short video of the portal. So if Sapna, you can maybe show the video, that would be great.
Can we have the video, please?
The Risk and Resilience Portal is an initiative of the Asia-Pacific Disaster Resilience Network, bringing together risk analytics and policy analysis under one platform for disaster and climate resilience in Asia and the Pacific. The convergence of natural and biological hazards with climate change is expanding the region's riskscape. The Risk and Resilience Portal addresses this new disaster climate health nexus. The Risk and Resilience Portal answers 4 key questions. First, where are the risk hotspots of the disaster climate health nexus? To prepare for the future, the portal has for the first time ever combined current cascading risk hotspot data with climate change risk intensification, estimating a moderate and worst-case scenario. Users can customize their experience through interactive maps, tables, and charts. Second, what are the current and future economic losses? Navigate through the portal and understand the total losses faced by their country. Which hazard is causing their country the greatest losses? And lastly, how much and on which priorities does the region and its countries need to spend to adapt to the emerging riskscape? The portal provides policymakers the information needed to make strong decisions on how much to invest and in which adaptation priorities to mitigate the risks faced by their country. Whether they want to compare their country's costs and priorities to other countries in the sub-region or view their country's detailed country report, the portal provides all the data in one place. The portal goes a step further by providing users of 5 Asian and Pacific countries a comprehensive decision support system. Through this tool, policymakers can navigate through their country's disaster risk story, obtain information on subnational disaster risk hotspots, and understand how the risks faced by their country intersect with regional and district level vulnerabilities. The portal takes the Asia-Pacific region one step closer towards mitigating disaster risks and achieving both the Sustainable Development Goals and the priorities of the Sendai Framework. Multi-sectoral risk-informed decision-making is at your fingertips.
So thank you very much for playing the video. And I would like to end here by saying that, as I noted, the portal is obviously a living thing. So we welcome your feedback as well as collaborations on the portal. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Madhurima. Please allow me to invite our final speaker, Dr. Shri Shravan from the UN Office of Outer Space Affairs. So please present your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I know I'm the last presenter, and I'm the person between you and your lunch for those who are attending it in India. So I will try to finish it in 5 to 7 minutes. So let me share the screen. So I hope the screen is visible. Okay, so given the context of this particular webinar, I thought I should talk a bit about disaster, climate, and health nexus, COVID-19 lessons learned. That is the thing that we are discussing right now. So when we give thought on that, we can see how these are intersecting. So this is how COVID-19 pandemic, disasters, and climate change. COP26 has generated tremendous awareness and united the world's leaders to combat the climate change. But the nexus of these three has already been felt past few years, and I think ESCAP has highlighted those that nexus in some of its reports. And it also said, Sanjay is also here, and probably that must have been spoken before. I joined little late because I was in another meeting. But just to get the context of topic, I would like to say that the systemic gap existed when Cyclone Nisarga, Amphan, and also some like recent floods in China that happened in Henan province. That was really exposed that we are not very well prepared for when those three things or cascading disasters happen. We are not very well prepared. And on 16 November, just about a week back, there was a BBC headline that Japan's export growth has slowed down as car production slides. And the reason is, again, because they are unable to get the chips for their cars, and the chips are manufactured somewhere else, for example, in Vietnam or somewhere. And because of COVID-19, those particular industries are not operating with its full capacity. And you can see worldwide, it has been impact, and that has been introducing the inequalities as well, which has been clearly highlighted in several reports that reviewed the progress of Sustainable Development Goals. So we have impressive infrastructure, but is it resilient, and are our methods are resilient really to cope up with those inequalities? Now, it's not only about Asia Pacific region or the developing countries. It's also using the current very latest events, the once in a century storm in Canada. Again, news on 16 November. It disrupted entire infrastructure in that region in Canada. West Germany floods killed 165 people, and the amount of garbage or junk that has created in West Germany is equivalent to the 40 years of junk that is created can be created in that region. So imagine the impact of environment, ecology, and all that. And this is a fury of a climate change, basically. Heat waves in Canada never felt before, once in a century. So now world is realizing that impact is not only the developing countries, but also developed and resilient countries who are taking pride in being resilient. They are getting hugely affected. So what is that's needed for disaster and climate resilience is of course systemic thinking, which has been promoted very well by ESCAP, good preparedness, infrastructure that will deal with unexpected impacts of climate extremes at both social, economic, and environmental preparedness. Then integrated planning across multiple stakeholders. I have been to several countries in Asia Pacific offering technical advisory missions, and one single thing I have observed which is common across all the country is multiple stakeholders. They don't communicate, they don't share the databases. Databases are not interoperable. So information sharing itself is a problem, and then the strategies that come out of that, they are not very correct. So this is one of the big hurdle. Of course, multi-hazard risk assessment for where planning and developing infrastructure. A lot of development happens, but the multi-hazard risk is not considered in many cases. So this is what is required for building disasters and climate resilience. And I come from United Nations Office for Outer Space Affairs, where we bring in value of a space-based information and space technologies, which is considered as evidence-based information. If you refer to Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction, it calls it evidence-based information because it is the evidence recorded past 50 years of accumulated information on atmosphere, lands, ocean. And if you can model it well, you can, and today it is very well accessible, and then use it for understanding the present and future risk. One can have risk-informed strategies for disaster, for resilient development, and that is the value we are trying to promote through our several programs like Space for Youth, United Nations Platform for Space-Based Information for Disaster Management and Emergency Response, that's called UN Spider, Space for Climate Action, Space for Sustainable Development Goals, and we also have Knowledge Portal for UN Spider. So there are several things we are promoting basically to achieve this resilience. Quickly, I'm going getting through our recent publications that matters the most for climate and disaster resilience. So one is about nature-based solutions that everyone talks. One of the 7 ways suggested to combat with climate change is go green, make a greening everywhere, plant the trees. So we have published Traveling Through Space and Time, Remote Sensing of the World Heritage Site. So this particular paper is published with the UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it gives you insight of all the methods and models about how one can monitor the ecosystems and understand the health of ecosystem, whether it is really contributing to DRR or not. So something called ecosystem-based disaster risk reduction and ecosystem-based adoption. It is revealing the concepts of these two to achieve the climate resilience. So I'm not going to discuss the technical part or not showing the maps at this stage because we have limited time. But this is a very important that everyone should plant tree, everyone should preserve the ecosystem, not just preserve, but monitor its biodiversity value, ecosystem functions, and that can be monitored with now multiple sensors using satellite Earth observation. United Nations recently launched Food System Summit, which is also a significant initiative for achieving the sustainable development goals or accelerating these efforts toward achieving sustainable development goals. And here we have launched something called indigenous research knowledge research infrastructure. Capturing indigenous knowledge for disaster risk reduction is also very, very important because indigenous knowledge, they know how to be resilient to disaster. They have been living in such areas for ages, and that needs to be captured. So we have launched this particular initiative, and now this initiative we are looking for partners to contribute. Also, upcoming report on global assessment report on disaster risk reduction in 2022. We have also a chapter on integrating indigenous knowledge and state-of-art Earth observation solutions for Sendai framework implementation. So we have tried to highlight how Earth observation will really capture and leverage the indigenous knowledge, which is also quite important. From those lessons need to be plowed in cities because urban areas is more and more getting impacted today, the events that I described in the beginning of my presentation. So we need to capture the indigenous knowledge. My last slide is about pandemic. We published recently a paper in Nature, especially Nature Medicine, and we're talking about can space-based technologies help manage and prevent pandemic? And reference goes immediately to the biodiversity nature-based solution. Can we have robust ecosystems so that pathogens don't escape to the human? And that is very, very important. That's why we really need a robust ecosystems. We have talked about nature-based solutions. But what space can contribute? Space assets can support the pandemic efforts in a big way. So biomonitor is the concept. Now this is biomonitor. This is from Canada. Canadian Space Agency developed a suit that monitors blood pressure, heart rate, oxygen level. It gives electrocardiogram and so many parameters it monitors, and this is made for astronaut. Now, can these biomonitors can be scaled or adopted for the frontline health workers or people who are offering the evacuation to impacted people during COVID-19 pandemic. It was a lot of health, people on frontline also got affected. So the doctors, nurses, biomonitor, the space spin-off. I'm talking of space spin-offs that can help in a big way. The technologies that were developed for space can be very easily modified for benefiting the society, especially during pandemic efforts. Teleepidemiology is very well established. I don't have to talk much about it. We know that malaria and many Ebola, they have been monitored by space. Virtual care is another important thing. The astronauts are there in the spaceship for 6 months, and how they can manage their health is only through virtual care. Now, those best practices can be brought back. The tools can be developed for helping the countries that are least developed and remote. So those virtual cares can be also modified for such things. And then important is supporting one health approach where plant health, animal health, human health, environmental health, all these things can be talked together, monitored together, and nexus between those can be found. And a lot of information on those one health related parameters and indicators can come from space, geospatial information integrated, of course, with a lot of other information from the global health domain. Mental health is another very important. Somebody is on isolation, and we saw lots of complaints that people say working from home or social distancing, isolation, and there were a lot of mental health problems. Astronauts stay in the space station for 6 months and they are in isolation. So how they manage their mental health, those benefits can also be offered to society. So there is a lot that space can do, contribute to pandemic and even preventing the pandemic if we learn the lessons from COVID-19. Something happened 100 years ago in Spanish flu, and I don't know whether we learn any lesson or we did not even know that Spanish flu happened until COVID-19 hit us after 100 years. So lessons were forgotten, and hope with all the technologies and all that, anything that we are learning now during this pandemic and the alarming situation caused by climate change and all that, we can learn the lesson and we can use the currently technology that was not available 100 years ago, but today it is available, and we can build better and better resilience. So this is all the message I wanted to convey in my short talk. Of course, there are some recommendations that in our paper that goes about how technology can be used for maintaining physical distance or supporting the medicines supply chain or supplying the medicines through drone and those kind of things. They go in our paper as well. But at this stage, I would like to stop so that we can, if possible, we can have some discussion. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Shravan, for telling us that space technology is a key driver of preparedness and resilience. With this, we have concluded all our presentations. Please allow me to invite again Dr. Sanjay Srivastav, who is the Chief of the DRR section, Disaster Risk Reduction section, UNSCAP, for the closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Sapna, and I must thank my colleagues, all the speakers of the session. Of course, we have run out of the time, so if there are the questions could be in the chat box. We will try to respond through message. But what I am really grateful to all our colleagues, the speakers, you see the variety that has been presented at the technical session. It has started from a problem, which is a systemic risk, and whole world even today also has not come out of it. And then what could be the possible solutions? There are solutions, and these solutions in coming year with all research, development, collaboration, all kind of technological innovations, the scientific research will develop in form of a what is called a pandemic prepared world for the future. I think that is what we can, a best case scenario that we can think of. So thank you very much once again to my fellow panel members, and this was a wonderful opportunity. I'm really sorry for running out of the time, but for such a intense subject, if you don't give freedom to the speakers, we will not able to do justice. So we will bring out a synthesis report of this meeting. We will also bring few recommendations from this session and share with the organizers of the WCDM, and it will become part of the recommendations of the WCDM. If any of my colleagues, the fellow panel members, if they have any suggestions, if they would like to share any perspective from their side, please do let me know, and we will welcome a brief remark from any of my fellow colleagues. So I don't see anybody, so I would like to conclude this session and thank with a big thanks to all of you, and we will be sharing with you the recommendations and a kind of synthesis report. So thank you very much once again. Yes, Sapna, over to you.
Thank you very much, everyone, for being here. Thank you very much, WCDM, for helping us co-organize. And a big thank you also to the tech team for your constant support, for letting us make it happen. Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, with that, we conclude this session. And the good news is here. We are taking a break for lunch. Let's see some smile on all of your faces as I invite you over to please join us at the Red Square lawn for lunch, which is behind the library building. Please enjoy the lunch break, but don't forget to join us back on time. Please remember, the next session starts sharp 2:30. So please do join us back well in time. Please be here positively by 2:20 so that we can start the next session on time. Thank you and have a great break.